The American dream today is dead for most people, especially for young people, the Gen Zers, the Gen Alpha, the millennials. Why is that? How do we get here and how do we get out of that situation? I'm gonna break it all down for you today, but let's start with what is the American dream? The way that I define it and that most people would define it is being able to own your own home, own a new car for that year, start a family, maybe of two, be able to sustain that on one income and then go about your life. That's truly the American dream. And a lot of that revolves around ownership, owning the house, owning the vehicle, being able to have a family, have the choice to have a family and make sure that they have a good life. Most people do not have that luxury. Let's compare some numbers. In 1975, the federal minimum wage was $2.10 an hour. Right? In 2020, the federal minimum wage remained at $7.25. And in 2025, the federal minimum wage is still $7.25. What I want to go over is the difference between the minimum wage, which really hasn't changed all that much, and the price of assets, the price of a house, the price of a car, right? That's what we're going to go over now. Housing affordability. This is the median home price in 1975. It was approximately $18,000, right? So the income required for something like this, you need about $7,000 a year. 2020, it jumps all the way up to $350,000. You need about $78,000 a year. In just 2025, this 5 years later, it jumps all the way up to $418,000 with an income required of $116,000. All right, kind of interesting. Now, when it comes down to the minimum wage hours needed, at first, in 1975, you're going to have to work for about 6 years full-time minimum wage in order to be able to earn enough to pay off your house. When it comes to 2020, the income needed has risen to $78K, and you're basically going to have to work 200-hour work weeks for that same 6-year period in order to try to pay off your house. And then in 2025, in order to do the same thing, making $117K essentially, which is again a nearly 50% increase from just 2020, that translates to 300 hours per week of minimum wage hours needed in order for you to be able to afford a house. Not possible, in case you were trying to do the math. Not possible. Renting and household basics. Minimum wage worker must work 32 hours a week just to cover rent for a median US apartment, which means they have no spare income for any other niceties or necessities. All right. A nicety is something that you like to pay for, but you don't really need it. Necessity is something that you actually need. It's a necessity. In more expensive metros, you're going to need at least 100 plus hours of work per week just to afford the rent. Vehicle ownership. Reliable data in 1975, the average new car price is about roughly $4,500 to $5,000. In 2025, a new vehicle average is about $46,000 to $50,000. In 1975, though a minimum wage earner had to work a lot just to get a car at $2.10 an hour, it would still take far less than the 2025 worker who would need to work 6,900 hours of minimum wage work, well beyond the laborer's lifetime compared to the 1975 laborer. Even though, again, the 1975 guy is only making $2.10. The minimum wage people today are making $7.25, so they're making 3 times more, basically. They're making 3 times more, but it's taking longer to buy stuff? Why is that happening? 1975, out-of-pocket medical costs were a small fraction of the household's income. 2025, premiums, deductibles, and family coverage can exceed upward of $15,000 per year, which is another strain on households, especially single-income households. This is part of the reason why you cannot have one person working in a house anymore. Moving on to wage stagnation. Minimum wage peaked in purchasing power in 1968. It has since declined in real value nearly 50% since then. It's much more than that. That's an incorrect number. Asset prices like homes, cars, childcare have risen much faster than wages. For instance, the typical household income rose about 4% inflation adjusted 2020 to 2025, but the median home price has risen 20% in that same time frame. Vehicles, healthcare costs, all of that stuff is similarly rising much faster than wages, right? Your ability to perform work and produce productivity has increased greatly, but the wages, your compensation for that work has stayed the exact same or has gone down. That's the reason why you feel like you're making more money, but you still feel poor or that you're getting poorer. That's essentially what has happened. We've slowly eroded away the American dream because you cannot have some wife at home who's just going to take care of the kids. She needs to go to work, and who's going to be watching the kids while they're both at work, right? It's not something that's going to be for free. It's very unlikely. You might be able to get a family member or a friend to help you out every now and then, but for the most part, you're going to have to pay to try to find either a nanny or a place to drop your kids off at. And that costs money. On top of that, both of you are going to work, you're burnt out, you're not making that much money, and someone else is raising your kids. Whether it's a daycare or once it's time for them to go to public school while you're at work, someone else is raising your kids for the majority of their life, because most of your life is spent working for money that the federal government can print out of thin air. You work for it, they print it. You save it, they debase it. You hold it, they dilute it. That's the reason why you cannot afford the things that you want to have in life. That's the reason why you cannot get to the asset side of life, the ownership side of life. It's always debt, 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 rent, rent, rent. It's the dilution of the American dream, because the dilution of our currency is the dilution of our society, of our values, of our ability to hold on to the things that we want, to achieve the things that we want, to own the things that we want to own. Now, what is the exit plan? What's the exit plan for young people especially? Because the boomers are already good. They went ahead, they had their little minimum wage time and free houses essentially and cheap education. But now the cost of education for young people is much higher. The value of that education is much lower. The quality of that education is much, much lower. So really, what is your escape route? Bitcoin is that escape valve. Why do I say that? Why do I make such a crazy claim? Bitcoin's a scam. If you actually understand money, where money comes from, what money is and what it's meant to do, the qualities of money, you understand that Bitcoin's the greatest money ever discovered. And that's the reason why it keeps outperforming everything. That's the reason why it's turning people like me into people who have far exceeded their peers in terms of net worth, in terms of what I'm able to own, what I'm able to buy, what I can spend my money on, whether I think about money a lot or not, whether I think about, all that stuff is way different because I own Bitcoin, right? Because people who own assets, of course, are going to accrue the value, especially in a society that is printing money, because all asset prices inflate. Your wages stay the same. So you can try to increase your wage, which sometimes is very difficult, especially if you're not in like a sales role. If you're in a normal job or a normal role, you're getting a 2%, 3% raise every year. And inflation is 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12% every year, right? So your wage is not keeping up with inflation. So the only thing you can do is try to own assets that do go up or keep up with inflation. That's why a lot of people who do have a little bit of money, they save up and they say, oh, I'm going to buy some stocks. I'm going to invest in real estate. I'm going to have a rental property, or I'm just going to be land banking. I'm going to own the house because I know that the house is going to go up in value faster than my wage, right? And again, most people can't even try that method. The real estate method is not cheap. You cannot just buy a house, start renting it out with a low income or with no money up front. It's quite difficult to try to do that. And even if you do try to do that, real estate is not the answer. That's an entire other video. But for the most part, Bitcoin is massively outperforming real estate, and it's a lot easier than trying to be a landlord, right? It's also far more effective and far more ethical than being someone who's land banking, right? Taking housing away from a bunch of other people who actually need the house to live in, whereas you are using the house as a store of value asset because you don't want to lose the value of your currency. That's the problem with debasement, and that is the reason why Bitcoin is greater money. It cannot be debased. Part of the reason why Bitcoin is growing faster than everything else is because you can make everything else way easier than you can make Bitcoin. You can make a lot of houses, okay? You can make a lot of cars. You can make more jobs. You can make more buildings, but you really can't make any more Bitcoin. There's a fixed supply. Doesn't matter how much demand comes, the supply is going to remain the same. This is extremely important because once you understand supply and demand dynamics, you start to realize that as more people want money that cannot be printed out of thin air or debased or diluted or lose value or lose purchasing power over time, more people are going to want to come to Bitcoin. And even though more people want to come to Bitcoin, you can't make any more for them. That's going to be the amount forever. And the only way to try to get a holder to want to relinquish their Bitcoin is to try raising the price, to bid the price up so that you might be lucky enough to have them let go of their coins, sell them to you. This is what we're seeing right now. Bitcoin is monetizing in front of the entire world. It's gone from 0 to 120,000, and it's going much further for that exact reason. And for many more. If you want to learn more, you got to check out the rest of my channel. But this is about the American dream. This is about ownership. And the truth is, owning one Bitcoin is the new American dream. It might seem impossible. It might seem like you can't achieve it. And to be honest, you probably cannot at this point. But even owning 0.1% of a Bitcoin is going to be the new American dream. That needle's always going to get pushed back. Eventually, owning 0.0001% of a Bitcoin will be the new American dream. And the reason why I say that is because, again, once you realize how small Bitcoin is compared to all the other asset classes, right? Real estate being $100 trillion market cap, equities in general being another multi-$100 trillion market cap, paper monies in general being a dozen trillion dollar market cap. Bitcoin's only a $2 trillion market cap. It's less than 1% of all the value in the world today. And it's coming for all of that value. It's coming for the value in collectibles. It's coming for the value in gold. It's coming for the value in real estate and equities and paper money derivatives. All that stuff is going to be eaten by Bitcoin because a lot of that stuff has a monetary premium, which is essentially a value that is placed onto the asset that is not tied to its utility. It's tied to it because of its store of value property or its ability to outpace inflation. Bitcoin is coming to eat the premium off of all of these asset classes. And when that happens, owning just 0.01% of the network will be so rare for individuals that people will call you extremely lucky. They will say it's not fair, they'll say it's this, they'll say it's that. But it doesn't really matter what they'll say besides how much can I pay you for that? And then there will come a point where people won't ask to pay you in dollars, they'll just have to work for it. What can I do for you in order to earn a couple of Satoshis, to earn 1% of a Bitcoin? So once you understand this, your main goal becomes being able to stack Bitcoin as quickly as possible. That's what many people around the world are doing. Normal plebs like myself, mega corporations, tiny corporations, mom and pop shops, sovereign wealth funds, countries, ETFs and asset managers, local accountants, dentists, doctors, everyone who understands Bitcoin, who understands where the world is going, who understands that nothing stops this train of debt, this train of devaluation, this train of inflation. These people realize that you can't stop the train, but you can get off and get on the other side of the track. Bitcoin is that other side of the track. Bitcoin is that thing that's outpacing inflation. It's preserving your purchasing power. It's accelerating your purchasing power because of its scarcity, because of its utility. There's going to be a lot of people who don't do any research and they say, well, Bitcoin's not used for anything and then it's basically useless and it's controlled by the government and it's a scam. And they'll come up with every single gigabrain genius excuse to not study, to not do any research, and to speak from a place of ignorance. That's fine. That's their prerogative. They can do that. That's totally fine. But if it's up to you to secure your own future and the future of your family, your future family, then you might want to start doing some reading. You might want to start doing some research. You might want to start broadening your horizon a little bit, because at the end of the day, you're probably not going to hit the lottery, but what you can do is you can hit the lottery in slow motion, and that's Bitcoin. Bitcoin is like hitting the lottery in slow motion, because it gives you your time back and it gives you your value back. If you get it, then you get it and you start stacking as much as you can. If you don't get it, you have much more research to do. Make sure you share this video with other people who have more research to do. And if this started you down the path, let me know in the comments. Come back to me in 4 years. We'll see how great of a decision it was for you to get started. If you enjoyed this type of content, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Share it with someone who might also find it interesting. And I'll see you guys in the next video, my friends. Remember, stack sats or die trying.